The conditional demand simply means we try to minimize cost. Okay? So someone comes to you and asks you, I want 100 iPhone, produce for me. What do you do? He comes to you and says, give me this in 1 week's time. So of course, the objective is to minimize cost, right? Now, I told you before last week, if you want to minimize cost, where should you go? On the budget line, which one? Tangent point. Right? What does the tangent point do? The tangent point is the optimal point. Optimal in what sense? It's a cost minimizing point. Okay, so if I want to produce this quantity, the lowest cost to produce it is how much? To produce at A. And how much is the cost? If you are producing at A, on the budget line, the ISO cost will be down C naught. It cannot be lower than C naught. Understand? The cheapest you can go to produce Q naught under iPhone is producing at A means the ISO cost, the cost is C naught. Remember? Okay. Now, what's the equation of this ISO cost? This is the cost, equal cost line to buy what? K and L. You agree? So what's the equation of ISO cost? So the cost comes from two sources, L and K. So you multiply by the price of labor, that will be a total labor cost. Multiply by the price of capital, that will be a total capital cost. Together, that's the equation of the ISO cost. Now, the slope of the ISO cost is how much? Slope equal opposite over adjacent. So if we take this divide by this, you're going to get a lower R. The same as everything. Right, the slope always give you the price of the good day. You are very used to Px over Py. That's because the good is called good X and good Y. But this good is called good labor, so price of labor, wages. Good capital, price of capital, interest rate. Okay, now, if I want to solve to produce 100 units of X of iPhone, the cheapest is to produce at A. So can you find for me the demand for labor and capital? This is what this chapter is all about, right? The demand for input K and L. So I know the cheapest to produce 100 iPhones to produce at A. A meaning I have to use L0 units of labor and K0 units of capital. So can you solve for me? How to get K and L? How to find this? This is the optimal K. Right. You can also look at it the other way. If you have to produce 100 units of X at the lowest cost, use K0, L0. This combination of capital and labor will help the firm to produce 100 units of X at the lowest cost. Okay, how to find L0? Just like your utility before. You have to find this quantity of labor, right? You must be able to write this. This essentially means this point. Write this in mathematics. Give me the mathematical exposition at this point. What is that equal to? But at this point, two lines are equal. Which one? The ISO cost, also called the budget line of the firm, and the ISO point. They are they touch each other, they are tangent to each other. If you see mathematics, what does that mean? Now, when two curves are touches each other, that means their slope are no. This is not like this. It's tangent. So if they are tangent to each other, that means the value is the same. Not only that, the slope is also the same. That means is at point A, the slope of the budget line, which is equal to W over R, is equal to the slope of the isoquant, the quantity curve, or in high crossword, the product curve. Right, quantity and product are the same thing. The total product curve. Now, if this is a slope is what? Marginal. Marginal what? If it's a utility curve, the slope is still marginal utility. If it's a product curve, the slope is still marginal product. There are two because one from labor, one from the other thing called what? One of the things called labor, the other thing is called capital. Okay? So the slope is a marginal product of these two things. Okay, so this is the pendulum form in mathematics. So we must align that. Here's L, then here will be the price of labor. Here's K, then here will be the price of capital. But you must align them. Because sometimes you misbehave by putting L here and K here. Right? Now, on graph it matters, but when you write equation, it does not matter. If you misbehave, then you turn the thing wrong. But you don't have to turn it on. As long as you match labor, price of labor, capital, price of capital. Simple. Okay, so it means you have to solve for this point. First, want to minimize cost. So this is the equation to minimize cost. And so you can solve this equation, you get this and this. Understand? But I think even if you wish to minimize cost, if I were you, I would produce it. Because producing at A, the cost is higher. I think here better. Right, see, the cost is lower. This budget line is lower, right? So why don't we produce here with this lower cost? Obviously on the red line, the actual cost is lower. Right, so to produce the item, if you produce on this budget line, the cost is lower. So why don't we produce on this line? If you produce on this line, what kind of item are you producing? Coin. With this kind of cost, how can you produce proper item? Right, except those used for brain coins. So it's very clear, right? Because the guy asks you to produce this amount. You can produce this amount using this cost. If you could, like I said, the item probably is the problem. Right? So, subject to this constraint. Understand? Subject to this constraint. If there's no such constraint, I will tell you I will produce here. Subject to the constraint that I must produce this, if I produce here, there's no way I can produce a net amount. The following are subject to this constraint, Q equal to this. This in mathematics, subject to Q being equal to Q naught. Understand? This is the constraint. Subject to the production function. That the Q must be equal to this. Simple. Okay, so once you get your mathematical equation correct, the rest will be very simple. So every you don't know the option to be doing it. This is same as option. For example, I just give you your test is option. I ask you to find for me the B. Now, if I've done so many exercises with you, how many lines I need to solve to find the B? At most 2, 3 lines, 4 lines, right? So if your test, like quite a few students who are just long pages, you know you're wrong. Now how you know you're wrong? Because the initial setup is wrong. Right, I think that person who do it also will ask what I would say. I think he gives the Hokkien word. Very short. The thing I need now. Yeah, of course I agree. You see, if you write your equation correctly, you do not have to go out to that extent. If you write just 2 pages of derivation on your feet, right? Even I also cannot read. So I try to figure out what he's trying to do. I cannot figure out. They're not bidding for a while, just bidding for a very simple trade. So 2, 3 nice finish trade. So in FE, if you find the solution that's strictly wrong, don't bother anymore. Something is wrong. Your initial setup. Okay, solving here now, once your initial setup is correct, this is the most important part. The rest of the thing becomes secondary. Why? You work from here. Alright? Now, what do you become very focused now? You know exactly what you want. You need this, and you need this. So what's MPL? What's the marginal product of labor? The marginal product of labor is the additional product. Marginal cost, additional cost. Marginal revenue, additional revenue, right? ER. Marginal utility, additional utility, DU. Marginal product, additional product, D product. Product and quantity are the same thing. So DQ. So the marginal product of labor is the additional product produced by one more worker. The marginal product of capital is the additional product output produced by one more machine. Simple? Okay, then we solve towards that. Now first, we have the equation here. So what's DQ over DL? DQ over DL, then you will get this, right? How to find marginal product of capital? It's the additional output produced by one more machine. So DQ over DK. Now if we differentiate Q with respect to this K here, you have this.